Let's talk about 10 watches that upon their release were kind of difficult to get, and some of them were even on waiting lists. However, fast forward to today, these watches could be found at a discount. I was surprised to learn that there's even a Rolex sports model on this list that once was pretty hot, and now you can buy one at a discount. My name is Oleg, and that right there is Mr. Bond. Now, before we get started, I just want to give you a quick disclaimer. For a lot of the pricing in this video, I will be using Joma Shop. I know a lot of you guys don't like Joma Shop, and no, this video is not sponsored by them. They're not paying me to make this video. It's just pretty easy for me to find exact prices on the used market as well as the gray market for some of these watches. Websites like Chrono24 and eBay have too many variables, although for some of the watches, I am going to use those websites as well. And now let's talk about the first pick, the Omega Seamaster 300 James Bond 60th Anniversary Edition. This model was released in 2023, and it's paying tribute to both the Seamaster as well as the James Bond franchise. Because of course in the most recent movies, James Bond is wearing a Seamaster on his wrist. When this watch was first released, I remember visiting one of the local ADs and them saying that there is a waiting list for this watch and how popular it was. Fast forward to today, 2025, and now you can find one at a discount. And overall, this is a really cool looking watch. It's a Seamaster without a date. Now, of course, there are Seamasters with no date, but this was kind of special. It was a special edition. It featured still the same case made out of stainless steel, 42mm diameter by 50mm like-to-like distance and a 14.3mm case height. So those are the standard Seamaster dimensions. This one still came with 300 meters of water resistance, and it still features that helium escape valve at the 10 o'clock position that I know a lot of people dislike. However, there are a couple of cool touches on this watch. Number one, it does feature a loomed bezel insert, which looks quite cool. Number two, you have the special case back with the James Bond silhouette, which also looks kind of cool. And it's of course signed with the 007 and 60 years as well. And in terms of the movement powering this watch is the caliber 8806, which is a META certified chronometer. It beats at 3.5 Hz and it features 55 hours of power reserve. The MSRP of this watch is $8,800 US. However, right now on Joma Shop, you can find one for about $7,800, $7,750 to be exact. That's a pretty hefty discount, and it doesn't mean that you have to go and buy one on a gray market. It's just a good information to know. So in case you want to buy one of these watches, you potentially could go to the AD and try to negotiate some sort of a discount. Probably not as much as the discount on a gray market, but perhaps 5%, maybe 6% or so. Worth a try at least. Next, let's talk about the Breitling Premier B09 chronograph in a 40mm case. A lot of people dislike Breitling. I personally am a big Breitling fan, and I clearly remember when this watch came out, this pistachio green dial was the most popular watch. It was sold out everywhere. A lot of ADs were taking names for waiting lists. This was the hottest watch that Breitling has produced in a long time. Now fast forward to 2025, and once again, just like with the watch we talked about from Omega, this one can be found at a discount. What made this watch so special were the dimensions. It was smaller than your usual Breitling watches, a 40mm diameter by about a 13mm case height. The case was made out of stainless steel and it featured 100 meters of water resistance. As far as the movement powering this watch is the caliber B09, which beats at 4 Hz, and it comes with 70 hours of power reserve. There were a few different versions of this watch available. The pistachio dial was the hot one. That was the one that everybody wanted. That was the one that was the most difficult to get. Nowadays, they're available at a discount. So a funny thing about this watch, in 2021, when it was initially released, it was priced at $8,400 US. However, right now it's priced at actually $9,400 US, $9,350 to be exact. Inflation, I guess. However, on a gray market, on websites like Joma Shop, you can find this watch for $6,500 USD, about a 30% discount from the current MSRP and still a pretty hefty discount from the 2021 price. Next, we have a couple of Tudor watches. First, let's talk about the Tudor Black Bay Pro. That's the black dial version that came out a few years ago. I remember when this watch was released, I actually did a review of this watch and it was divisive right off the bat. Some people really liked it because it was this brand new model that was sort of rivaling the Rolex Explorer 2. Some people disliked it because of its case height. However, even with this watch being fairly divisive, it was a hot release, and there were once again some waiting lists for these watches. Now, I should have mentioned this at the beginning. I live in Vancouver, Canada, so this video is from my standpoint, from my market. Perhaps if you live in Europe or Asia or even in other parts of North America, your experience could be very different with these watches. Maybe your ADs had them in stock all the time. In Vancouver, we sort of have a pretty active watch market, so a lot of the models are harder to find. I tried to balance out this list. However, I just wanted to mention that because perhaps some of you are already writing comments. What are you talking about? These watches were always available. Well, in my market, they were kind of hard to get. Now, this model is still available from Tudor. It's made out of stainless steel. It features a 39mm case diameter by about 14.6mm case height. So the case height is really the issue with this one. That's because it's powered by the caliber MT5652, which is a COSC certified GMT movement that beats at 4 Hz, and it comes with 70 hours of power reserve. And as far as the price of this watch, the official MSRP is just over $4,000. However, on a gray market, you can find them for around $3,240. So they're offered at a pretty hefty discount, and they are available in plenty at the moment. Now, before we move on, I should also mention that there is the new version of this watch with the polar white dial. Currently, that model is fairly hot and it's fairly difficult to find. Don't panic. My prediction for that model is the same destiny as this model. In a few years' time, perhaps even in a year's time, that model will be not only readily available, but probably will be available at a discount. There's one more Tudor that I want to highlight in this video, and it's the Pelagos FXD. To be fair, there are quite a few different Tudors that I could have chosen for this video. Tudor had their moment where a lot of their watches were on the waiting list. However, I clearly remember the release of this watch and how rare it was to see one at the ADs. And once again, there were waiting lists. And when you had a review of one of these watches on YouTube, it was a big deal because these were sort of pretty rare. And there are a few different things that made this watch very special. One of them were those soldered lugs. So you could only wear this watch on a select few different strap options, primarily that NATO. In terms of the case and the dimensions, this watch is made out of titanium. It features a 42mm diameter by about 13mm case height. It's actually 12.8mm case height to be exact. It's a fairly large watch still with the 52mm lug-to-lug distance. And this one is powered by the caliber MT5602, which is a COSC certified movement that beats at 4 Hz, and it comes with 70 hours of power reserve. This model also features 200 meters of water resistance. The MSRP of this watch is $4,300. However, right now you can find them for under $3,900, once again on gray market marketplaces, as well as websites like eBay and Chrono24. Next, let's talk about a couple of more affordable watches. The first one we're going to touch on is the Hamilton Khaki Field, the Murph. The original Murph came out in 2019, I believe, and it came in a 42mm diameter, which was kind of large for a lot of wrists. However, in 2022, Hamilton has brought back this model in a more reasonable 38mm diameter, which is a lot more reasonable for a field watch. This model is still powered by the same movement, the Hamilton H10 automatic, which is based on ETA movement. It beats at 3 Hz and it comes with 80 hours of power reserve. Undeniably, the style of this watch is what really sells it. It has this really clean appearance, and on the wrist, these watches wear really well. Besides the cool design of this timepiece, there also is a movie tie-in because, of course, this watch is based on a watch from a movie, Interstellar, that was a pretty big hit. And initially that model from 2019, the very first one, was pretty popular. This newer version was even more popular. Once again, I remember these watches being sold out everywhere, and I remember them going even over asking price on gray market. Well, now fast forward a couple of years and these watches are available at a discount. The MSRP of this watch is around $945. However, right now you can find them for around $850. So not a huge discount on this watch by any means. However, you're not paying over the retail price. Now you can score them a little bit below the MSRP, or if you don't want to go with the gray market dealer, at least you can walk into the store and pretty much guarantee that you're going to walk out with one of these watches. Next, let's talk about the Tissot PRX Carbon edition. This watch is what inspired the idea behind this video, because I remember when it came out at the end of 2024, I think it was September, October, I really liked it to a point where I actually went on a Tissot website and I was gonna buy one of these watches. To my surprise, they were completely sold out, and they were sold out for a while. There were waiting lists, and on a gray market, these watches were actually selling over the original MSRP. Well, fast forward to today, not only are they now available, but they're available at a discount in a pretty short period of time. So let my experience be a lesson to you. Maybe wait a little bit. And in my case, I didn't even want to buy the watch anymore, but if I still wanted to buy the watch, at least now I could score a pretty good deal on it. Now, this is another edition of the legendary PRX at this point. It's probably the most popular line of watches in Tissot's catalog. This one comes in a 40.5mm diameter, 46mm lug-to-lug distance, and about 11.2mm case height. It's made out of forged carbon, including a carbon dial. Now, one of the reasons why I personally didn't buy one of these watches was because of the gloss finish on the carbon dial. I found it to be too distracting. I wish they went with the matte dial instead. I think that would look much better with the overall aesthetic of this timepiece. As far as the movement powering, this one is the Powermatic 80 that beats at 3 Hz, and it comes with 80 hours of power reserve. And the MSRP of this watch is $1,050 which I think is actually a pretty fair price for it. However, at the moment you can find them on websites like Chrono24 and eBay from reputable sellers for around $850. I've seen them as low as $800, so a pretty hefty discount, about 20%. And these are brand new examples, not used stock. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about another expensive watch, the Zenith El Primero Chronomaster Sport with a white dial. This model came out in 2021 and was available with the black color scheme and the white dial color scheme. Out of the two, the white dial was more popular. Again, I remember going to ADs and they didn't have one in stock and there was a waiting list. However, fast forward to today, and just like with many other watches, now they're available with a discount. As far as the dimensions on the watch, they're about 41mm in diameter, 13.5mm in case height. The case and the bracelet are made out of stainless steel, and these watches feature 100 meters of water resistance. They're also powered by the caliber El Primero 3600 that beats at 36,000 vibrations per hour, and it comes with 60 hours of power reserve. These watches can measure 1/10 of a second, which is very impressive. When you engage one of these chronographs, it is really a sight to behold. The MSRP of this model is $11,300. However, on the gray market, you can find them for as low as $7,500 USD. And if you go for the black dial version, you could have those watches for even less. However, I wanted to focus on the white dial version because that really was the hot one. Next, let's talk about a Grand Seiko White Birch reference SLGH005. At one point, this was one of the most popular models that Grand Seiko made, and I remember going to ADs and these watches were not available anywhere. You had to sort of order one ahead of time. I don't think it was a waiting list, but you had to wait for one. So it wasn't like there were 5 people in front of you. You just had to sort of place your order, and then later on they would send you this watch, and there was no way to even think about getting one below the MSRP. Fast forward to today, about 4 years later, and now these watches are available with a pretty heavy discount. As far as the case dimensions, this one is made out of stainless steel. It features a 40mm diameter by about 11.7mm case height. It's powered by the caliber 9 SA5, which is an automatic movement that beats at 36,000 vibrations per hour, and it comes with 80 hours of power reserve. This watch also comes with 100 meters of water resistance, and it has one of the best looking dials that I've seen on any timepiece. Especially when you see one of these watches in person, it's mesmerizing. There is a reason why Grand Seiko is a master in making dials. The MSRP of this watch is $9,300. However, right now on websites like Chrono24, you can find them for as low as $5.5 grand. I think that's actually a used version, or you can pick up new versions for around $7 grand, $6.5 grand all day long. That's a pretty hefty discount for a watch that at one point was one of the most popular in Grand Seiko's catalog. While we're talking about Seiko, let's talk about the Prospex Speedtimer chronograph reference SSC 813. I remember when this watch came out, and I keep on repeating the same story, I apologize for that, but I went to the AD and they didn't have one in stock. They didn't know when they were going to get one in stock. They had a waiting list for these watches, and on the gray market, they were going for over the MSRP. To be fair, the supply chain caught up with the demand fairly quickly. I remember within a year, these watches were readily available and they were even offered at a discount. Now fast forward about 4 years and these watches are available at a pretty good discount. They're still one of the underrated watches in Seiko's catalog. I think it's just one of the older models, so a lot of people overlook them, especially because of that solar chronograph movement. These ones are not automatic chronos. However, the case dimensions are very reasonable: 39mm diameter, 13.2mm case height. They feature 100 meters of water resistance, and they have a very attractive design language if you're into chronographs. Now, the MSRP of this watch is $695 USD. However, right now on gray market, on even Amazon, on eBay, on Chrono24, you can find them for as low as $500. I've seen them even as low as $450. Next, let's talk about Rolex Explorer 36 in oyster steel and yellow gold, reference 124273. I clearly remember when Rolex released the smaller version of the Explorer in the 36mm diameter, and they also released this two-tone version, and at that time I was very skeptical of it. I mean, it does make sense because Rolex already offers quite a few of their professional models in the two-tone, so why not Explorer? But for whatever reason, it just doesn't work with this design, and it feels like a lot of the watch industry agrees, because now fast forward 5-6 years later, these watches are not only available at the MSRP, which is sort of rare for Rolex sports models, they're available at a discount, brand new, on the gray market. Just like with many other Rolex sports models, when this model was initially released, there were waiting lists for this watch. People had to wait, they had to buy other watches in order to qualify to purchase this one. And I think even at the moment, Rolex is playing a bit of these games. For instance, if I go to a local AD and I ask for one of these watches, I don't think they would just give me one. I would probably have to wait and play a bit of a game. So it's important to know that these watches are not that difficult to find anymore, and you can actually score them on the gray market. Now, as far as the watch itself, it's about 11.3mm in case height. It features 100 meters of water resistance, and is powered by the caliber 3230, which is an in-house automatic movement that beats at 4 Hz, and it comes with 70 hours of power reserve. Now, the MSRP of this watch is 13,200 USD. However, right now on Jama Shop and other such websites, you can find one for around 11 grand. We're talking about what, 10-15% off of the MSRP? Yeah, kind of rare. So now you know. And that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more videos like this in the future, and leave a comment in the comment section. Let me know what watches you liked from this list, what watches you think deserve to be on this list, and also let me know what watches I left out of this list. Perhaps I'll do a part 2 of this video in the future based on your suggestions. Thanks for watching this one, and we'll see you next time. Bye.